only by 2024. Along with the efforts of the government of Mauritius, the Ministry of Tourism, and all other tourism stakeholders, the MRIC wanted to see how it could contribute to the recovery of the travel, tourism, and entertainment sector through research, technology, and innovation. So we started this consultative process around 3 months ago, whereby we invited the main travel, tourism, and entertainment stakeholders to join us. The majority responded positively, and a working group was constituted. We have had representatives from parastatal bodies, academia, tourism associations, and private companies. So the working group met over 3 focus group meetings in February and March and discussed about the current situation, gaps and challenges, the initiatives already being implemented by different stakeholders, the emerging international travel trends, and the research, technology, and innovation needs of the travel, tourism, and entertainment sector. The MRIC also had a one-to-one discussion session with a representative of UNDP Mauritius, which has begun a youth in tourism project to better understand the impacts of COVID-19 on young persons. Following the brainstorming sessions, the working group came up with 5 tentative strategic orientations and short-term, medium-term, and long-term action plans. All of these discussions have been drafted into a working document, which will be presented shortly, so that all tourism stakeholders present today in the room and online will have the opportunity to give their views. I wish to point out here that we do not want to repeat or replicate or trespass on the mandate of other institutions. The focus of the sectoral forum is on how research, technology, and innovation can help transform the travel, tourism, and entertainment sector through research innovation projects, research innovation programs, technology-related projects, incentives, funding schemes, and policies. With this, I'll leave the floor back to Kiran. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Rubina, for providing us with an insight on the constitution of the working group, and most importantly, on the process that was adopted to come up with the working document. So, ladies and gentlemen, the working document is principally classified into 3 main segments. So the first one being a bird's eye view of the travel, tourism, and entertainment sector. Secondly, the barriers and improvements in the sector. And thirdly, the innovation in this particular sector, which will be presented to you shortly by all our speakers, prior to initiating the panel discussion with our innovation champions. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the privilege to invite Ms. Vanessa Sibalot, lecturer from the School of Sustainable Development and Tourism at the University of Technology, Mauritius, to present the first segment of the working document. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Like Rubina just mentioned and said, travel, tourism, and entertainment are key to the success of our business, tourism business. So I'm Vanessa Sibalot from the University of Technology, and I've been given the task to give you a bird's eye view of the travel and tourism entertainment sector, the draft of the working report. So hence the scope of the Assises is to identify research, technology and innovative strategies that will help attract more high-yielding tourists, point the tourism and hospitality industry towards developing strategies to provide high-quality service, and at the same time, move the island towards achieving socio-economic stability. The working group for the travel, tourism, entertainment segment have therefore, through the following objectives, set the foundations to the development of a roadmap for the recovery of the sector amidst and post the COVID-19 pandemic. The identification of research, technology, and innovation gaps and challenges in the TTE, identifying emerging technologies and trends at international level, and making recommendations through projects, programs, incentives, schemes, and policies. So in order to better understand and shape our future, let's take a quick glance at our current status. So the objective of Mauritius is to increase tourist arrivals. The One Mauritius strategy was devised in order to get all stakeholders of the tourism sector working in joint partnership so that the right innovations are devised to improve on our TTE. Entertainment was added to the strategy as tourist experience is part of the new travel trend. Our arts and culture is not sufficiently used in the promotion of tourism, and it is poorly developed, unfortunately, nor recognized as an integral part of tourist experience. Hence, the Ministry of Arts and Culture, in collaboration with the tourism sector, hopes to find innovative ways to help grow the Mauritian arts industry. It is a fact that our entertainment sector is lagging behind in terms of innovation, and the integration of the community often left out for sustainable tourism development. So the working group has therefore devised a range of guiding principles to aid tourism development. The first principle is sustainability. It is important to adhere and respect the criteria set by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, whose aim is to establish and manage tourism sustainable standards. Investing in tourism should therefore have a positive impact on the community and society. Secondly, it is imperative for tourism success that all stakeholders of tourism collaborate when devising new innovative strategies. We must not forget that the relatively small size of our island makes it vulnerable when it comes to carrying capacity. We must not, therefore, we need to think in terms of quality over quantity. And this is an important third guiding principle. The mainstay of our tourism industry remains its natural attributes and its natural attributes and the hospitality of the Mauritian population. You agree with me? So far, so good. Hence, it is important to protect this attribute, to protect our destination's attribute. And last guiding principle is that incentive rewards business for behaving and operating responsibly. So therefore, what are the different targets that were identified by the working group? First things first, demand, getting people to come over. Increasing our international bookings by not only focusing on our main markets, but also exploring new ones, promoting our low season and maybe looking into the feasibility of the MICE sector. When tourists arrive to the island, the destination must be able to cater for their needs. Not only does this act as a pull for motivating tourists to choose our destination, but also provides them with opportunities to create memorable experience, which can act as a great promotion tool for return intention and or promoting Mauritius through word of mouth. Air connectivity, rapidity, reliability, and safety is a must for Mauritius due to our geographical location. Relooking into our airline regulations, bilateral agreements, freedoms of the airline capacity to increase accessibility is necessary for getting more people from our existing markets or even when tapping into new ones. So all this said, we have to thus carefully pay attention to the new travel trends in tourism. And you would agree that at the very moment, the number one concern is health safety, pandemic, hygiene, okay? These still remain a barrier to the full-fledged travel and tourism. People are triggered also by personalized advertising and promotion, and marketeers have been using online data to track people's browsing habits in order to do so. The pandemic has forced much of the world to quickly adopt biometric identification as a means to preserve health safety But in much developed countries, these tools have been used a while back, even prior to the pandemic. Tourist behavior itself is changing and has changed over the years so that they look at engaging more with the host community, all with a view of knowledge, culture, and experience as part of their holiday. When it comes to artificial intelligence, AI has been developed and is used in the tourism industry as a means to bridge the gap where human interaction has been found to be difficult. The Internet of Things has made travel and tourism more accessible via smartphones. The transport sector, in a quest to meet their sustainability goals, have encouraged travelers to purchase carbon credit or even hire electric vehicles whilst on holiday. Augmented reality is used to provide a real-time experience of a location, which has aided in decision-making about a destination. People have become more health and animal conscious, revealing new trends in eating habits, all the vegan issue you've heard, I'm sure. Some of our main competitors are already making a move towards catering for these new travel trends, as well as in the entertainment sector. So let's take a quick look at what the competition is actually doing. Seychelles, our neighbor, for instance, is looking at increasing its product diversification for eco-marine culture and heritage tourism. Furthermore, it has identified and developed niche tourism sectors such as sports, agri, and adventure tourism. They are growing their marketing, promotion, and sales efforts through digital marketing and e-commerce. They have seen the value of developing local talents for entertainment, hence creating that tourist experience of authenticity. It has developed sustainable tourism practices and aims at becoming a GSTC certified, amongst others. And lastly, it has invested in its national carrier to sustain accessibility to their island. Looking now at what Maldives has been up to, it has on its part invested in communication strategies to position its destination through public-private partnerships. With regards to sustainability, Maldives has invested in developing protection programs for its marine ecosystems and venturing into low-carbon programs for the tourism sector as a whole. It is moving towards engaging the local community in tourism development, hence bridging that gap between community needs and tourism impacts. They are also devising strategies for the diversification of the tourism product, like Seychelles are, in the MICE, ecotourism, pro-poor tourism and inclusive development, culture, and adventure tourism. So we have competition out there. Therefore, what is Mauritius doing? Where do we stand in all of this? Okay, when it comes to using catering and using technology in meeting these new travel and tourism trends. We too have been active, but there is more that can actually be done, hence our presence here today. When it comes to health safety, many resorts already have, across the island, have adhered to the Feel Safe label certification in line with international standards. There have been a wide adoption of contactless payment for minimization in terms of contamination. There has been a kickstart in the use of VR initiated by the MTPA, and the MRIC is already funding a project on the development and implementation of virtual tours for Mauritian museums to promote our national heritage. You've all heard of Abbey? Who knows Abbey? Anyone? You don't know Abbey? Okay, good. So the banking sector is already using service robots. This could be further expanded to the tourism sector to facilitate bookings and purchases and doing different tasks in the hospitality sector, such as concierge, receptionists, bellboys, bartenders, room service, online customer support. Japan is very famous for this advancement in technology and using AI. Mauritius is and will soon be facing the new generation of consumers, the children. What are your children into? I bet it's all the high-end AI information technology. They know more than us and expect such technological adoption at their chosen destination. A bit like we currently look for Wi-Fi connection, don't we? That's the first thing we do. Let's get Wi-Fi. But the next generation of tourists will be looking at AI as a norm when it comes to their consumption of tourism. There has been a quick implementation of digital tags can be seen as a quick win for transforming the island's tourism industry to be in line with global digitalization trends in areas such as tourist information, simple things, sanitization frequencies of different places, even the hotels, purchase of tickets to different attractions and transportation using the QR code. And to conclude, finally, based on the few examples above and following the guiding principles that were devised by the Working Committee report, we need to work as one Mauritius so that our tourism sector can find its own competitive advantage and ensure the sustainability and prosperity of not only the tourism industry, but also that of our local community. Let's not forget that apart from technology, people play a major role in making Mauritius a hospitable destination. Let's bear in mind that tourists, they crave for local experiences, are more ecologically and health conscious. Thank you very much.
Entertainment sector. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to invite Ms. Dinah Omugam, who is the head of operations at Hospitality Plus Limited, to present the second segment of the report, which is on the barriers and improvements on this particular sector. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Les Assises. And after Vanessa's very excellent presentation, I will be going through the barriers and improvements related to the travel and tourism and entertainment sector. But before doing so, I would like to go through a quick reality check and a few global observations. The travel, tourism, and entertainment sector is dynamic, and we are also living in an unpredictable world where global and social and economic crisis is spreading at national and at international level. And we have seen that there is a growing gap between large operators and individual ones. And with that, inflation is hard to control and is not linked to macroeconomic factors. We are also living in a world where compliance is getting more and more complex. And fierce competition every day, everywhere, Maldives, Seychelles, Mauritius, Sri Lanka as well. We are all competing with each other, national and international level. And sometimes, I must say, there is unrealistic and costly environmentalist pressures. And the last one being on distance vulnerability, where Mauritius remains and will remain far from its catchment area. Markets. So after these, let's look at a few initiatives that the tourism industry, the tourism authority, has been working on. We have seen lately that the tourism authority has been very active in the environmental sustainability projects. One of them being collaborating with a German agency to train tour operators on how to incorporate features of sustainability in their operations, such as zero paper, plastic to protect, preserve the environment, the engagement of local citizen participation, local handicraft, explore historical and cultural attractions, adopt local farmer initiatives, the training of both taxi operators and handicraft, to enable them to adopt to new technologies leading to low emission and lagoon pollution. There has also been a few webinars for hotels and tour operators, as well as workshops with artisans, discovery tours, and a few campaigns with NGOs for the cleanup of the destination. Along with the Reef Conservation Society, the Tourism Authority has worked on the conservation of the mangrove, and they are currently working on a Sustainable Tourism Mauritius Award organization, which will be in May 2022. So these are a few initiatives of the Tourism Authority. Let's take a look at a few initiatives that the Mauritius Tourism Promotion Authority is currently working on. We have seen with COVID-19 that a short-term strategy is very important. So they are currently working on a short, medium, and long-term campaigns, which is entitled Feel Our Island Energy. The campaign Mauritius Now will be launched as from May to September 2022 with a target of where they are targeting primarily families and honeymooners. And then there is the repositioning of Mauritius as a major MICE destination. So these were for the Mauritius Tourism Promotion Authority. A few initiatives of Mauritius Underwater Cultural Heritage, quite a few actually. Their project, the aim of their project is for developing a framework for the sustainable management of the underwater cultural heritage sites in maritime zone of Mauritius, with the objectives of providing capacity building in underwater cultural heritage, to identify and document the marine archaeological resources in the maritime zones of Mauritius, to ensure the integrity of the underwater cultural heritage, and to investigate means to develop a sustainable underwater cultural heritage tourism, and lastly, to create awareness on marine archaeological resources. And now I would like to go through a few important gaps and challenges that have been identified by the working group pertaining to sustainable tourism. The hotel industry and tourism industry are two different components of the sector. And we have seen that more emphasis is laid on the hotel industry rather than the tourism industry, where there is no common project, common innovation project. How many times have you seen that after long holidays, our beaches are left in filthy situations? So we have seen that there is a lack of waste bins around tourist sites and public beaches. The message that stray dogs are conveying to our tourists, the shocking images that we have seen on social media sometimes, and the lack of information in terms of dress codes when you visit religious places. While big hotels, resorts are already implementing solutions keeping in mind the SDGs, small players, guest house, Airbnbs, they also must be sensitized with regards to these. Thefts, excessive prices charged to tourists. Fuel has increased, but then we have seen that the transfer to the airport has greatly, excessively increased as well. And the last point I have here, COVID-19 contributed a lot to these. The attitude of locals towards tourists has changed, where there is lack of hospitality, lack of welcoming, or even resentment. Now, the gaps and challenges pertaining to the infrastructure, where the road signage is very poor. There is missing, damaged, or outdated information boards at tourist sites, no QR code. Everyone is doing QR code, why not us? limited coordination between Ministry of Tourism, district and municipal councils. What about marketing and visibility? We know that Mauritius is said to be a sea, sand, and sun destination. And we rival with Maldives, with Seychelles, with Sri Lanka. And these countries, these islands, they continually top the global list of beach destinations. Limited online marketing campaigns compared to Maldives, which is very attractive. We have seen recently on their social media how many celebrities are going there. And some of you know, some of you maybe not, we do have a Mauritius destination app called the My Mauritius. And there is today limited awareness on this destination app. A few challenges and gaps related to the human resource and capacity building, what academia is producing and what is the current market demand. I think Sydney would agree with me that we need more blue colors training than white colors, more hands than brains. And today, people, they are no longer passionate of their job. Some people will join undergraduate travel, tourism, and entertainment courses, mainly sometimes, because they haven't secured any seat in other preferred choices. And the constraint in employment and working conditions. We have seen since a few years now, pre-COVID even, people shifting to cruise ships instead of hotels due to attractive package, due to the tourism industry having irregular working hours. And another point is with regards to the crafts that we have. Some hotels are not engaged in encouraging locally produced goods. You have seen that our dodo are still made and produced in China, and they are selling it in the resorts. A very important point here, data capturing and monitoring. More than important, I would say. We have this embarkation form for I don't know how many years now, and I believe it is high time that we try to find a solution for this. It is being filled by us, by everyone, manually, and I think when there is garbage in, there is garbage out. Instead of the source of the country, I think we should look at from where the guests are booking. We have seen Statistics Mauritius said recently, or for a few weeks, for a few months now, that there is an increase from people from UAE. I believe that this increase is not really people from UAE. These are most probably expats living in UAE and traveling to Mauritius for holidays. And I think some of you know that the last tourism satellite account was lastly updated in 2018. Should we look at past data? Should we look at forward data? What is more important for us? Yes, past data is important, but forward-looking data is more than important today. These are a few very important things maybe we should consider about data capturing and monitoring. The next one on cultural tourism. I believe today, I haven't seen any, maybe I'm wrong, that there is no data capture in any of our cultural heritage sites or museums. Do we know how many tourists are going there? Do we know how many locals are going there? There is no proper mapping of location or description of natural heritage sites found on the websites of the National Heritage Fund. There has been an app. I think it will be coming, but I think the location to go there, it's very difficult to go for tourists. The last slide being on the underexploitation of medical and wellness tourism. Mauritius offers a suitable alternative to the long waiting list and expensive medical procedures in developed countries. And I think we have a well-developed network of private clinics offering cosmetic surgery, hair transplant, and dentistry. And Mauritius is located at the crossroads of Africa, Middle East, and Asia. And we also have world-class hotel infrastructure that can combine healthcare, wellness, and leisure. Long-haul travel may not encourage patients to travel to Mauritius. So instead, I think we should focus on regional markets by capitalizing on Mauritius being stable versus other destinations where criminality rate is high. So I will end up now here by quoting the General Secretary of UNWTO, who said last night that tourism is a pillar of peace and international friendship. And members of UNWTO must uphold these values or face consequences with no exception. And he wrote this after the Russian Federation was suspended last night by the UNWTO, losing its immediate effect, its right and privilege as being part of the UN specialized agency. Thank you.
Presented so well the prevailing gaps and challenges and the different initiatives which are currently being implemented by the different institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to listen to our third speaker, Associate Professor Robin Nenku, who is the head at International Center for Sustainable Tourism and Hospitality at the University of Mauritius, and who is also going to moderate the panel discussion of today. Dr. Nenku, may I request you to talk on the strategic directions and also to provide an insight of research and innovation projects which the working group has.
Thank you, Kiran. Good morning, everyone. What I'll do, I'll build up on what my colleagues have said already. And obviously, Vanessa have talked about have provided an overview of the tourism sector. Diana have talked about the challenges, the gap, and what the various institutions are doing. The key question in front of us now is, how do we get there? Okay, so what we've come up with in the working group is 5 strategic orientation, which we believe represent the foundation of the tourism, travel, event, and hospitality sector. Okay, they touch upon sustainability, human capital, marketing, data, and obviously connectivity. Okay, so I'll focus more on those, and you will have the opportunity to discover more insights in our panel discussion that will take place soon after this presentation. The first strategic objective is obviously sustainable tourism. Okay, and I've got 2 approaches to sustainability in here. The first one is the triple bottom line approach to sustainability, which is very, very well known to everyone. Sorry. Good. Yep. So this is the triple bottom line sustainability. This is the 3 ring versus the nested model of sustainable tourism. Now, obviously, they all talk about the 3 basic principles, but what we've been doing so far, we've been focusing on this one, the 3 ring model. And what it means that we still can have an economy without the environment and without society. Okay, it's just that the economy will not be sustainable in the long term. So you can still have the economy, but think about it. How can you have an economy without the environment? So the nested model of sustainability or sustainable tourism or sustainable development, no matter how you call it, emphasizes on protecting the environment first. Because the philosophy is that the society depends on the environment, So if there's no environment, if there's no fresh air, there's no fresh water, there's no resources, there would be no society. So if there is no society and there's no environment, how can you have an economy? So the economy only sustains, the economy only exists with the existence of the environment. So central to any strategic orientation the tourism industry take is the protection of the environment. And I'm using the term environment very broadly here. Okay, when I'm talking about environment, it's natural environment, the resources, the water, the ecosystem. Okay, people also form part of the environment. And this is why the first strategic orientation we're proposing is on sustainable tourism. And obviously, one way of measuring that is by looking at current indexes. Okay, we do fairly badly when it comes to sustainability in Mauritius. Okay, with the help of Tourism Authority, we've done a few projects on that. And obviously, tourist perception of sustainability in Mauritius is very, very poor. I think Diana mentioned a very important point. We need to make a distinction between the tourism and hospitality sector. When we talk about the hospitality sector, we basically talk about the hotel sector. I think the big company, the big hotel, they are doing enough when it comes to sustainability. But think about it. Tourism is more about the people. Tourism is more about the public. So sustainable tourism cannot be achieved if we do not have the public understanding of sustainability, us, all around us, the people down the road, the beach hawker, people that have nothing to do with the tourism industry, they need to understand what sustainable tourism is. Sustainable tourism is a culture. And the only way we can make Mauritius sustainable is by focusing on public understanding of sustainability. And that's really very important. We need to embed sustainability in our daily life. It needs to become part of our culture, guys. Otherwise, on what basis do we say, okay, Mauritius is a sustainable island? And obviously, the trickle down effect, the spillover effect of a good public understanding manifests itself in the way we behave. We behave on the beach, the way we behave vis-a-vis tourists. I think that would matter a lot for the image of Mauritius from a behavioral and also from an attitudinal perspective. So public understanding of sustainability and a few projects that we have proposed in the report includes attitude towards sustainable tourism, public understanding of sustainable tourism, developing a culture of responsible tourism, and obviously you can consult the report for more details. Second, obviously, when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about tourism industry, we cannot neglect human resources. Okay, tourism, irrespective of the technological revolution that would have influence, that will influence the industry in the near future, it still remains a people-to-people sector. It's very labor intensive, and very often that people-to-people interaction give rise to the hospitality that Mauritius is known or was known for. Okay, so when we talk about human resources in here, we talk about training and development. And training and development is evolving. COVID-19, for example, has provided new challenges for training and development. Okay, digitalization has also lots of implication for training and development. Okay, when we're talking about, Diana mentioned, or even I think Vanessa also mentioned service robots. Do we really understand the implication for human resources? Okay, on one hand, it's about training, understanding the acceptance of service robots from the customer perspective, the traveler's perspective, but it's also about preparing the human resources to meet the future challenges of the tourism industry. And those challenges are multifaceted. Technological challenges, behavioral challenges. Travelers' behavior are changing. Our human resource pool need to understand those challenges, need to understand the behaviors of the new tourists. So lots of implication for training and development. And obviously, we've also come up with a number of suggestions or potential projects that would fill the gap between what the industry requires and what universities and other institutions are providing. Third, marketing, an ever-evolving concept, guys. Okay, so when we're talking about marketing, there are two main dimensions to it. Okay, is technology. Second one is tourist behavior. We need to understand who to market to and how to market. The who is extremely very important because tourist behavior are changing. Okay, you've mentioned, Vanessa and both Diana mentioned it. The new tourists, they are looking for what you call the edutainment. Previously, they were traveling for entertainment, traveling to have fun, traveling to enjoy, but now they are looking for edutainment. And the word edutainment comes from the term education. So they are traveling to educate themselves. It's not only about formal education, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you travel, you discover, you learn about other people's culture, heritage. You learn about the contemporary way of life. And these are what our marketing strategies should focus on. So unless we change our marketing strategy, we adapt our marketing strategy, okay, to meet the needs of the new tourists, remembering that they are looking for what you call an integrated product. The 3S branding we have is no longer sufficient. And I often say that to all my students very often, okay, destinations are substitutable. They're like boyfriend and girlfriend. You don't like one, you choose the other now. Okay, so because destinations are substitutable, we have to be very careful. We have to prepare ourselves for the new demand, for the new types of traveler that's emerging. And second is how do we market? Technology. Okay, I will talk about data, and I think Diana mentioned some very valuable insight about data. Okay, we are increasingly living in a data-driven world. The advent of social media has led to the democratization of information available on the net for travelers to use. Okay, social media provide a valuable source of information for destination marketers to understand tourist behavior, tourist expectation, tourist needs, tourist attitude. And with technology, especially with machine learning and natural language processing, there are ways to analyze those data effectively and obviously translate those findings into implementable marketing strategies that benefit Mauritius. Okay, so like what I mentioned before, there are a number of projects that we are recommending in the report, and obviously you're welcome to come up with new additional and reasonable projects. Fourth, data. Okay, and I think I've talked about data already. Okay, the advent of big data, the availability of information. Okay, I think so far, to be honest, we have been relying on backward-looking data about tourist arrivals. But what about forward-looking data? Diana mentioned very valid points. And how can we engage in evidence-based policymaking, in evidence-based marketing strategy, without understanding what the market requires? And the only way we can do that is by making use of data, by research, innovating the way we do our marketing. Understanding that tourist behavior does not really imply a one-dimensional approach. We need to understand it. Okay, we do roadshows, fair enough, but there are other ways to understand, to approach, or to appreciate what the new tourist would be looking for. So decision-making based on data, forecasting. There are forecasting models that have been used, that can be used to be more effective in our marketing strategy. And finally, connectivity. Okay, unfortunately, at an island destination, we embed the characteristic of insularity. We are surrounded by sea, and we are remote, which means that airline connectivity is our most important survival strategy for the tourism industry. Okay, and when we talk about airline connectivity, when you talk about remoteness, when you talk about insularity, there are additional challenges. Mauritius, like any other small island destination says, is the rising cost of travel. Okay, and now we are facing the problem of rising petrol prices. Okay, in 2050. Okay, I'm not too sure Many of you know the oil crisis or the peak oil crisis. At some point in time, okay, our oil reserve will be depleted. Okay, so what happens then? Can we imagine a tourism industry, a travel industry without petrol? Okay, what are the implications for petrol prices? And what are the implications for travel and travel behavior as such? Bearing in mind that obviously travel, the cost of travel impacts directly on destination competitiveness. Nevertheless, there are a number of projects that I think we should engage on to understand travel behavior when it comes to connectivity, when it comes to airline seat, when it comes to the concept of hubbing. Extremely very important when you talk about airline connectivity in today's world. So guys, these are the 5 strategic orientation the working committee has come up with. And of course, you're welcome to add your valuable insights as we proceed with the conference today and tomorrow. And obviously, in terms of implementation, okay, we are talking about short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Okay, and obviously, when I was referring back to changing attitude, changing behavior, that doesn't really happen in the short term. It really happens in the medium and long term when you look at behavioral research on those topics. Okay, it has implementation of those projects, focusing on those strategic orientation, advancing them requires changes to our regulatory framework, okay, some of which are outdated. Okay, institutions need to innovate themselves, need to innovate in laws, regulations. We need to move forward. Key to the success of any policy, not only tourism policy, health policy, development policies, social security policies, is the involvement of all stakeholders, irrespective of the level of power and tourism policy making, like any other public policy making, okay, is a struggle for power. So irrespective of the level of power, irrespective of power as manifested in the size of organization, we need to involve all stakeholders. Public-private sector partnership, extremely very important. Okay, the private sector had a very, very important role to play in marketing. Okay, because, and obviously they spend much more in marketing than the public sector does. So there's a need for coordinated approach as to what are we marketing to travelers? Are we not creating distorting images here about Mauritius? So that needs to, we need to engage in discussion through public-private sector partnership. And obviously, guys, and because I'm from academia, from the University of Mauritius, I strongly believe in research and innovation, the whole result of this conference today. So where are the knowledge gaps? What do we not understand enough? Once we understand this, and how do we get there? So research-based, evidence-based policymaking with respect to the 5 strategic orientations. And as I said earlier, we will have an opportunity to debate this further with our panel members in the panel discussion that will happen after this presentation. So thanks a lot, everyone. Okay, and I would welcome any feedback on the working document. I think MRIC would also welcome any feedback, any suggestion you may have. Thank you very much.
Perfectly. The diverse strategic directions, which could indeed help in the identification of pertinent research and innovation projects, programs, and schemes. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of all presentations for today. The working document also contains a few cross-cutting recommendations, which will be presented tomorrow by the moderator during the plenary session, together with the outcomes of the panel discussion, which shall start shortly. But prior to that, let us take a small pause of exactly 10 minutes for the tea break, and we shall come back again for the panel discussion. Thank you. having a set of presentations this morning was basically to set the scene. The current session will allow you to listen to our innovation champions in the sector and to participate and contribute further during the moderated panel discussion. Just to let you know that we also have virtual participants who are attending this session, which is being recorded for the purpose of reporting. They will be able to send us questions, comments, and recommendations via the Eventee application. To note that the focus of this session would be on technology research and innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now introduce to you the moderator of the panel discussion, Associate Professor Robin Nenku from the University of Mauritius. Dr. Nenku is a senior research fellow, an adjunct professor, and a visiting researcher at well-known international universities. In addition to his master's degree in tourism management, he holds an MPhil in tourism economics and a PhD in political economy. He is the managing editor for the Journal of Hospitality Marketing and Management and an editorial board member of several leading journals. Dr. Nenku recently figured among the world's top 100,000 scientists across all fields in a study conducted by Stanford University researchers. He is also well known for participating in similar fora and for moderating panel discussions related to travel, tourism, and entertainment. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to invite Associate Professor Nenku to moderate his session. May I request you to introduce your panelists and start the discussion? So over to you, Dr. Nenku.
Good. Thank you, Kiran. Welcome back, guys. We have the pleasure today to have an eminent panel in front of us. So they are all well known, but nevertheless, I'll spend a few minutes to introduce them. Mr. Renaud Azema, the Chief Executive Officer of Vatel Mauritius, very deeply involved in training and development of our hospitality workforce. Mr. Jocelyn Kwong, the Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Hoteliers in Mauritius, more commonly known as l'ARIM. Mr. Sidney Pierre, the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer of Marriott International Mauritius, okay, very important stakeholder when it comes to the tourism hospitality sector. Mr. Robin Ramit from the MTPA, the marketing arm of the government of Mauritius. And then Mr. Philip Taylor, the Director of Hospitality Plus. So we have, well, basically a well-represented panel, I must say, okay, with very deep expertise in the tourism and hospitality sector. Today's panel is about research and innovation, which, as I mentioned before, and I think all our presenters mentioned, is key to competitiveness. Now, the term innovation in itself comes from the Latin word innovatus. In simple term, it means creating something new. And that creating something new might be in terms of processes, in terms of project, managerial innovation, etc. Okay, so the way the panel is going to proceed, we are going to start with some general debate about innovation and its application to the tourism and hospitality sector. And then obviously to build on the presentation we had earlier on, we'll talk about motivation and its implication for sustainability, its implication for human resources, training and development, marketing, etc. Okay, so my first question to the panel is, we already know that tourism and hospitality sector has to innovate, but what does that precisely mean? What does the term innovation mean for the tourism and hospitality sector? Philip, probably I'll go with you. Thank you.
Yeah, defining innovation is a challenge because it's such a vast topic. I would say that innovation drives transformation. It's new processes, new technologies, new products that enable organizations to change the way they work, to become sustainable long term. It enables you to survive, basically. Without innovation, there's no survival. And concerning our tourism and travel industry in Mauritius, more particularly, I think we've had a very, very successful run for 40 or 50 years. And we are now facing serious challenges with our key competitors, who themselves may have leapfrogged Mauritius in the way they do things. You know, it requires a lot of fresh investment to change a lot of things in Mauritius. And it requires money. Voilà.
Robin, yeah.
Well, thank you. I would refer to innovations in the words of Schumpeter: creative destruction. Okay, we destroy and create, we destroy and create. And in a nutshell, and this is very, very important. If we talk as per today, it's an integration of state-of-the-art, evolutive, dynamic technology in the overall tourism value chain, including communication, marketing, and promotion. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. I think it's great that you gave that description of innovation, with definition, creating something new. Something new for our industry doesn't mean that this thing does not exist somewhere. Very often, we tend to dig too deep and look for something, investing resource where we can just sometimes easier just look next door, what's taking place and happening, and just introduce the same thing. So innovation for our industry, I think, just have an open eye and just look what's happening next door. And sometimes it's so easy. And sometimes I often say it. I mean, Philip and I will brainstorm very often. Just copy and paste sometimes. It makes a big difference.
Thank you, Sydney.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Tourism is very complex, as we all know. And as one of the speakers said earlier today, when we talk about tourism, many of us, I won't say most, but many of us still refer to the hotels and the industry as a whole. But the challenge for us really is to convert our tourism from a resort holiday destination to a full-fledged island tourism destination. And innovation in the broad sense, with input of technology, which impacts favorably on simple things like operations, management, etc., also needs to, come across to all of the stakeholders here. When we are talking about the destination, we're talking about the natural endowment, we're talking about the man-made structures that improve our level of living standards. At the same time, we're talking about the industry with all those people and families earning a living out of the industry, and then host community, which is supposed to benefit from this activity. And innovative initiatives are short-lived because opposite to these destination facets, we have the traveler, and whether he's responsible, whether he's got expectations that are changing, whether this traveler is becoming a resident, etc. All these impact fully on the way we can imagine, create ideas that improve the day-to-day operations, plus the responsiveness of the industry towards changing guest expectations in a changing world where many innovative ideas, I think 6 out of 7 ideas are short-lived. So innovation is really being able to take all these things together. I fully agree with Sydney. Ne passons pas à côté des choses simples. So don't let us all get bogged down to multiple complicated things, but very simple things, because it's at the end of the day, it's about hospitality and a host destination that is more predominant than just a resort hotel destination. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin, Bruno?
Moi, j'aimerais porter le débat au-delà de l'innovation et parler un petit peu de la disruption. L'innovation est un changement qui est apporté à un état établi et soit de process, soit de produit. La disruption, c'est un changement drastique sur les marchés qui permet à un opérateur qui parfois n'était pas du tout présent sur le marché et qui prend une part importante de ce qui constituait les parts de marché d'acteurs très bien établis. Si on se réfère au tourisme, un gros disrupteur qui est apparu il y a quelques années, c'est Airbnb. Les hôteliers n'ont pas vu venir Airbnb. Aujourd'hui, Airbnb est dans la nouvelle économie, je pense que Philippe en reparlera plus tard, dans la nouvelle économie qu'on dit ubérisée, est un capitaliste sans capital, avec une offre qui est aujourd'hui largement répandue. Et cette innovation qui est disruptive dans le sens où elle bouscule complètement le marché, est parfois beaucoup plus importante que les petites innovations ou les petites améliorations qui sont apportées, soit à un service, soit à un produit. Et donc, l'évolution de notre secteur d'activité doit être de se poser la question, comment peut-on évoluer pour servir une clientèle, et ça a très bien été dit dans les rapports qui ont été présentés ce matin, une clientèle qui est évolutive, mais je vous rappelle que Steve Jobs disait « il ne faut pas faire en fonction de ce que le client demande, puisque le client lui-même ne sait pas ce dont il a besoin ». Et c'est comme ça que le iPod est né. Et donc, notre industrie est une industrie qui est elle aussi évolutive et sujette à une évolution inconsciente des besoins d'un client chez qui on crée ce besoin. Et donc, l'innovation ne doit pas être, et on en reparlera certainement, à la solde des data, et j'aurai un point sur ça plus tard, à la solde des data, ne doit pas être non plus le simple constat de ce qu'il faut faire pour améliorer un produit ou un service, parce que l'innovation, à mon avis, elle est au-delà de ça et elle ne devient réellement une valeur ajoutée et un progrès que quand elle est disruptive.
Merci Renaud. There's one thing that obviously you all have mentioned and implicitly and explicitly is that innovation requires resources, be it financial resources, and obviously it involves considerable human resources. But the challenge we are facing in today's environment is the debate between short-term versus long-term investment. Okay, it would do no justice to this debate today if we do not bring in crises such as disasters and health crisis, or even any other economic crisis we may have. So how did that impact on innovation, Philippe? I mean, the challenge between focusing on the short term versus the long term.
You know, there's one thing that we've got to be clear about is innovation, any form of innovation requires change, and change requires money, capital. And we live in a very destructive environment where capital is short all over. We're short of money all the time. I mean, our industry as a whole is hugely indebted. And it has unfortunately worsened in the past 2 years. Innovation requires long-term investment, generally speaking. And few shareholders and few sources of funds have the ability and patience of waiting for long-term returns. We're competing. Innovation and investment in innovation competes with urgent matters, urgent objectives. And often our long-term strategies are often overridden by immediate firefighting situations that require capital, capex. Okay, so very often we get disorientated between the short-term requirements and the long-term objectives of where we want to go. And as operators in the hotel industry as a whole, we have to make choices on a daily basis. You know, where do we allocate our scarce resource? I see it every day. You know, I preach and that's my job. I mean, my job is enabling hotels to think forward, to change the way they do things. and it requires investments. It requires people. It requires training. It requires changing the way we do things, the way we see things. And I'll come back to our competitors. Our competitors are doing it. They're doing it because they didn't have it to start off with. You know, if we look at, let's talk about Maldives. Maldives, in the past 10 years, they've built 130 brand new hotels. Brand new hotels. How can our old, historic hotel industry compete with them? Let's be serious, guys. I mean, I don't have the answer to all this, but I'm just asking questions. How is it that the average room rate of a 5-star property in the Maldives is 1,200 euros per night in bed and breakfast, and ours runs at about 500 and 600 euros at best? You know, there must be reasons for it. It's all down to having been able to leapfrog certain business models. And that is not the fault of Mauritius. It is not the fault of Mauritius. But we need to engage now in evaluating what needs to be done. And I end up sitting in so many meetings all the time, brainstorming, discussing, and I see our competitors in the Seychelles. The Seychelles is hugely dynamic, you know. Decision making is made around a cup of coffee. You know, they make decisions overnight. They don't have meetings on meetings on meetings. You know, we spend our time discussing about the problems. And by the time we've finished discussing about the problem, that problem has already evolved in any case. So what I can say is, you know, innovation is permanent. It's around us every day, but we live in a fast-tracked environment. We need to accelerate our decision-making process, and we need to federate our industry a lot more into investing in common projects that require a lot of money. And there are quite a few out there. I hope I've answered some of your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit more on that. Just one more question. Yeah, so obviously this raises the challenge between short-term investment versus long-term investment. So how do you manage that conflict by the time you're investing in innovation, implementing it, and what about the chance that innovation become obsolete? How do you reconcile that short-term versus long-term?
You know, we mustn't get confused about the word innovation. You know, innovation is process changes. It's about investing in new methods of work. I mean, the biggest innovation of our generation is the internet. The internet has changed everything, the way we do things and everything else. The internet has enabled smartphone. I mean, the smartphone has killed everything around us. Apple has killed 15 or 16 industries, not brands, industries, okay? Now, that's an innovation. In our hotel and tourism industry, you know, let's be serious about it. We're not talking about major innovations here. We're just talking about changing business models. We're just talking about investing in common use technologies that will change the way you do things. Now, talking about short-term and long-term investments, whatever you do, okay, you need long-term investments. You need CapEx. Unfortunately, we live in a world where financial specialists, banks, stock markets, funds, insurances, they all pressure people in operations. I mean, Sydney will tell you a lot more about that than I can. But, you know, it's all about short-term delivery. You know, you've got shareholders knocking on your door several times a year, looking for dividends, looking for profits. Now, you've got to prioritize short-term profits or long-term survival. It requires investment, and changing your business model requires a lot of long-term investment. I can't say more than that, because I think we've got to come down to reality and keep things simple. Using the word innovation too often kills its purpose. I hope I've managed to explain myself.
No, that's good. I like your closing statement, because it's like sustainable development. It's been used too often that now it's considered very meaningless sometimes. Okay. Now, but obviously you've raised some very important point, which I would like to to, Robin would like to add a few things to that.
Just to add on what Philip has said, at the end of the day, innovation has become a mindset. Okay, unless you are imbibed with this particular mindset, then you can easily drive the innovation changes or whatever you want to call it, and it goes ahead. So
that's good, Robin. Obviously, we will have a debate on that culture of innovation. But obviously, Sydney, you represent a very important hotel group in Mauritius. So what kind of innovation strategies, I mean, have your group or the hotel sector in general implemented, also taking into account the COVID-19 pandemic that has forced the hotel sector to think differently, to act differently?
Thank you, Robin. Just before I answer the question, I think I'd like to welcome this Assises de la Recherche et de l'Innovation in absence of Assises du Tourisme. And I think using what Philippe mentioned and your opening statement with regards to the meaning of innovation, I think let's call and get rid of that word saying what's new. I think the industry in general will succeed if we can bring new processes. And Dana, just to answer your question, I think we need both the brains and the hands. And I've seen in the rooms a lot of brains which we need to use even more extensively. What's new? If we can just tomorrow, I think you're helping on that, Robin, just take all the recommendations, because I don't think it stopped here. If we can take, because unfortunately I could not attend the entire week, but just a few hours I've been spending listening to both key researchers, the academia. It's been great, a lot of recommendation, but I've heard that years and decades. For the last 3 decades, I've been in that business. I've heard some basics. And you know, I've survived in this industry, like I'll start responding to your question, or succeed, define, you define. I started as a trainee in the hotel industry just because of probably my lack of conventional education. Sorry for academia. I also needed, Professor Sibalak, I had to do a degree and a master to survive, or else I would have died. So, but sometimes we tend to make this industry more complicated what it is. So not trying to engage in a debate, I think something creating new sometimes can also be at no cost. So if tomorrow we can start with the basics of things that we've been said and heard on radio by Sen, in the newspaper, Philip Weeks in boards, Jocelyn, I mean, all the professionals of industry. If we can start reconciling them, and I think we have a lot of brains in the room to can structure that, what the industry require as a basics. It's good to run, it's good to go to create great technology. But I think sometimes we need to start with the basics. When we cross the borders, I mean, I was amazed at the speed the industry reacted. Just imagine a whole industry that were dependent on those key feeder markets, which are 11,000 kilometers far away. Suddenly they can't even, a plane can't even land. And all the hotels were full. And I'm sure some of you were looking for a hotel room you could not find, because Mauritius, as a nation, as an industry, we managed to reinvent local events, new entertainment. It was really great, amazing. I personally, I don't know, you benefit from that. And for me, it was an eye-opener. Of the 3 decades in that industry, I've never seen that. So, because we are resilient. So sometimes innovation, creating new, and like I said in the beginning, it's just think, sometimes if we put the bar, it's like high jump. Believe it or not, I was a high jump champion at school. But you don't put the bar at 2 meters because you'll kill yourself. So sometimes Mauritius need to start at the bar at 50 centimeters, maybe. I don't know where the bar should be. But when you look at the competition, you say, okay, Maldives is doing this is doing that, etc. Okay, before you travel, you have a technology, you press a button, everything is done. Like Dana mentioned, you need to fill a lot of form, and thanks to Hospitality Plus, who created this all-in-one form now, you just go online. So this is innovation, this is new. But this exists in other countries. Just look at what's happening there. And sometimes I bet it does not cost. Yes, a lot of innovation costs money, an app, a system, solution, etc., etc. I agree. But for the tourism industry, I'm talking about the tourism industry. Just look at over destination. At school, you all teach best practices. So let's start with the best practices first. Then we can develop. I'm not against spending. I'm not against having stakeholders in this thing. But I think if we leave this conference, we leave this room, we go. We will have another Assises in 2 years again. We'll be hearing the same speaker with more gray hair and etc. And we'll be still sitting and talk about what other destinations are doing. We won't move. So let's take one new things that we can do. Take recommendation from the expert and implement them. Now, I'd like to end with that. Sometimes, very often I hear politics, government. I don't agree, not always agree, because those people, those politicians, they are not experts most of the time. Those experts are us. They read recommendation. Sometimes our recommendation experts are the wrong ones because we want an easy job. We don't get out of our comfort zone. We don't have the guts and come and say, this is what needs to be achieved. That's why when we talk about this industry, but I'm very passionate of, this is not an industry, a topic that we can mix politics in. It's about the survival of economy, and it's also an opportunity because this industry can create more jobs and can even increase its contribution to the GDP. So I'll end responding the question, this nation, this industry had no choice. So sometimes when you are facing a situation of survival, this is where innovation comes. We didn't have any choice, no cash flow, nothing, we had to pay our bills. Where is the nearest market? The nearest market was just there. The locals, the Mauritians, how to attract them, creative events, things that they like. So this is how we managed to survive. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental things you've mentioned about innovation is we require expert brains. Okay, which brings me to a very important point about human resources, right? So innovation requires changes in training and development. You are a well-known and respected figure when it comes to training of for our hospitality sector. So obviously, what innovation we need to bring in our training and development, both at the pedagogical level and at the practical level for us to be able to embed that culture of innovation in our labor force.
Merci pour l'appréciation. Je pense que dans l'approche de la formation aujourd'hui, et on va parler de formation à différents niveaux. Il y a la formation que certaines institutions comme Batel, Polytechnique, l'école hôtelière dispensent aujourd'hui pour le secteur touristique. Et puis, il y a la formation qui est dispensée à l'intérieur des établissements eux-mêmes à travers leurs académies ou leurs centres de formation et qui a une autre vocation. Pour ce qui est d'abord de notre positionnement, j'ai lu avec beaucoup d'intérêt il y a quelque temps qu'une innovation majeure avait été lancée à l'île Maurice qui était que une institution allait allier la pratique à la théorie pour faire que les étudiants formés dans cette institution allaient être plus performants. Ça fait juste 40 ans que Vatel a mis en place ce système et que nous dispensons à l'île Maurice depuis 13 ans. Et donc, l'innovation pour une institution, et je rejoins ce que disait Sidney un peu plus tôt, une innovation pour une institution, une destination, n'est pas forcément une innovation en soi. C'est l'application localement de quelque chose qui a été mis en place ailleurs et qui trouve sa justification dans un territoire dans lequel elle n'était pas impliquée jusqu'à maintenant. Et c'est une forme d'innovation locale. Ce n'est pas une nouvelle idée, mais c'est une intégration, une adaptation de quelque chose qui existait. La pratique, la théorie, aujourd'hui, ça ne fait quasiment plus débat. Il est nécessaire pour former des jeunes dans l'industrie qu'ils aient à la fois la connaissance et qu'ils aient la pratique. Moi, j'ai étudié grâce à Sun, il y a 25 ans, et Paul Jones, à l'époque, qui était aux commandes, Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey disait dans ses 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you need to have 3 things. Knowledge, skills, desire. Knowledge and skills, c'est la connaissance et la pratique. Et ce n'est pas nouveau. Et pourtant, c'est quelque chose aujourd'hui que certaines institutions de formation n'appliquent toujours pas. Et on forme des chômeurs. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il y a un manque d'employabilité. Donc, il faudrait que cette innovation ou que cette approche soit déjà mise à disposition ou appliquée par l'ensemble des institutions qui prétendent alimenter une industrie. La deuxième chose, à mon avis, qui est importante au niveau de la formation dans nos centres, c'est qu'effectivement, on est challengé aujourd'hui par la technologie. Le formateur, il y a 20 ans, ou il y a 30 ans, il était le seul détenteur du savoir. Aujourd'hui, quand vous venez dans une salle de classe, et il y a un certain nombre d'entre vous qui sont des formateurs aussi de temps en temps, vous êtes challengé par celui qui est au fond de la classe, qui sort son smartphone et qui vous dit « Monsieur, madame, non, excusez-moi, le chiffre n'est pas bon. » Ou « Ça a évolué. Le produit n'est plus correct. » Et donc, ça nous oblige en termes d'approche pédagogique à intégrer le fait, et ça c'est un changement, et c'est un changement qui n'est pas opéré, encore une fois, par beaucoup d'institutions, y compris la mienne. On est toujours dans le schéma classique d'un formateur devant un tableau ou un écran avec un vidéoprojecteur, ou avec soit un feutre, soit une télécommande laser, et on explique, on veut donner une connaissance à des étudiants qui ont déjà cette connaissance dans leur poche et qu'il faudrait juste leur expliquer comment aller chercher cette connaissance pour pouvoir l'exploiter au mieux et exploiter celle dont ils ont besoin. Donc, une grosse, à mon avis, évolution, amélioration de l'enseignement pour pouvoir être en adéquation avec les besoins de l'industrie, c'est de permettre non seulement aux étudiants de travailler par eux-mêmes, ce qu'ils ne font pas. La technologie aujourd'hui est au contraire en train de détruire la capacité analytique de ces étudiants-là. Et il faut qu'on arrive à leur donner une méthodologie d'utilisation de ce progrès technique pour qu'ils l'utilisent correctement et non pas qu'ils se retranchent derrière, parce qu'ils deviennent feignants, ils ne lisent plus. Et à chaque fois qu'ils ont un problème, qu'est-ce qu'ils font? Ils demandent à Google. Donc Google est devenu le meilleur ami de tous nos étudiants. Et le mien aussi, accessoirement. Donc, ça fait partie du gros changement de l'approche. Et il y a probablement, alors je ne suis pas en train de dénigrer les nouvelles technologies, au contraire, nous devons les intégrer, ces nouvelles technologies, mais adapter le comportement et la formation de nos formateurs. Il y aura un formateur qui vient aujourd'hui et qui se met dans une salle de classe et qui lit un slide ou qui déclame quelque chose. C'est ennuyeux. Donc, on a depuis 15 ans commencé dans la pédagogie à renverser en fait cette pédagogie, la reverse pédagogie, le flip classroom. La classe n'est plus elle devrait être ronde en fait. Il n'y a pas de devant et de derrière. Il y a le formateur qui est au milieu, qui devrait être au milieu et qui est un facilitateur de l'accès à la connaissance et la mise en réflexion de groupes de travail qui doivent se challenger les exigences aujourd'hui du marché, pour ce qui est des NA, des white collar, hein, c'est d'avoir des gens qui savent réfléchir, analyser, résoudre des problèmes et faire preuve, au-delà de tout, d'agilité. Et aujourd'hui, ce qu'il manque beaucoup dans nos formations, et peut-être, j'espère, un peu moins dans les nôtres que celles qu'on peut trouver ailleurs, c'est ce troisième volet que Stephen Covey identifiait comme étant la motivation, le désir. Et moi, j'appelle ça le savoir-être. Eh bien, le savoir-être n'est pas assez enseigné, ni en famille, perte de valeur totale dans la société, et la société mauricienne fait ses choux gras dans ses tabloïds de ce manque de valeur, une grosse partie de la société. Mais dans l'école, dans l'endroit, dans le temple de la connaissance, on doit enseigner à nos jeunes à se comporter, et pas à se comporter simplement les uns vis-à-vis des autres, mais à se comporter vis-à-vis de son employeur, vis-à-vis de son client, vis-à-vis de l'évolution d'une société. Et ce savoir-être, aujourd'hui, fait partie des choses qu'il faudrait remettre à l'honneur. Ce n'est pas une innovation. Et vous savez, moi, je pense qu'il y a des choses qu'on faisait très bien il y a 30 ans et qu'on ne fait plus aujourd'hui, ne serait-ce qu'apprendre l'étape de multiplication. Je ne sais pas comment vous apprenez l'étape de multiplication à Maurice, mais moi, j'ai appris ça il y a très longtemps, en les répétant, en les répétant, en les répétant, et à force, on les savait. Eh bien, aujourd'hui, on ne répète plus aux gens. On leur dit une fois et on prend ça pour acquis. Eh bien, je pense qu'une grande innovation pédagogique serait de remettre en place les répétitions pour que les gens aient cet ancrage de la connaissance, cet ancrage des valeurs. Je suis un peu vieille école, non? Ok, très bien. Donc, voilà, je pense que, et ça, c'est pour le côté école. Maintenant, du côté de l'entreprise, dans l'entreprise, l'apprentissage et la formation est en train d'évoluer aussi beaucoup. Parce que les hôtels, l'industrie est en train d'évoluer, la clientèle est en train de changer de comportement. Et donc, il faut appréhender la formation à différents niveaux. Il y a d'abord le niveau de quel type de formation on doit faire. Est-ce que c'est de la formation pour des exécutants ou de la formation pour des managers? On n'aborde pas ça de la même façon. Est-ce que c'est de la formation dans un département opérationnel ou dans un département de support? Là encore une fois, si on veut faire de la formation efficace du côté opérationnel, le but c'est quoi? Améliorer l'opérationnalité, donner un petit peu plus de productivité et faire en sorte que le niveau de satisfaction des clients augmente. Ça, c'est l'opération. Ça n'a pas la même valeur que la formation qu'on doit dispenser à celui qui chapeaute le département, et qui doit avoir, lui, ce qu'on appelle les leadership skills, et qui doit être formé sur l'accompagnement de ses collaborateurs. Et donc, la formation en entreprise doit répondre à ces objectifs différenciés selon les départements, selon le niveau et selon la capacité aussi, qu'il ne faut pas ignorer, des apprenants. On a encore à Maurice, et j'ai parmi mon personnel, de nombreuses personnes qui ne savent pas lire. On ne peut pas les mettre devant un ordinateur en leur disant « allez faire du e-learning ». Ça n'a pas de sens. Et pourtant, il y a des solutions e-learning qui sont très performantes. Et donc, l'innovation, ce n'est pas juste de mettre à disposition des outils technologiques, c'est d'apporter la méthode qui va permettre à celui qui est concerné d'apprendre et de pouvoir répéter ce qu'il a appris de façon régulière, à un niveau systématique pour maintenir le niveau de qualité. Et in fine, et on en reparlera après peut-être, ça touche à la gestion des ressources humaines, puisque évidemment, aujourd'hui, on ne l'a pas encore beaucoup évoqué, mais on manque de main-d'œuvre dans l'industrie. Pourquoi manque-t-on de main-d'œuvre dans l'industrie? On a un gros problème, et on a un gros problème d'éducation. Ça commence avec ça, mais je pense qu'on en parlera après.
Merci Renaud. Now, obviously, there's one take-home lesson from this first part of the panel discussion is that human resources is fundamental to innovation. Okay, so the link is bivariate, as we say in the academic jargon. Innovation influences human resources also have an impact on innovation. But obviously, we cannot talk about tourism industry without looking at the perspective of sustainability. Okay, so when we talk about innovation now, just probably I'll throw the question to you. What, in order for Mauritius or any destination to remain competitive, its sustainability practices has to evolve. So how has innovation impacted on sustainability, or how the hotel sector made use of innovation to advance the sustainable development agenda?
Thank you, Robin. I think we all agree that sustainability is the way forward, and there are many threats aimed at Mauritius when we know, things like long-haul travel is going to be challenged over the next few years. Digital nomads are always mentioned as being a target market for Mauritius, but digital nomads also are being criticized more and more because what's the deal of working from long distance when you could have done so much closer to your workplace and your clients? And sustainability is also linked to the way local communities get something out of tourism, And it's not always the case as long as we are a predominant hotel resort model. So we haven't got much time to talk about so many aspects of tourism and how Mauritius needs to become a full-fledged host destination to tourism. But I think just to park away the hotel mandate and what they do, I think the illustrations are abundant in the report that's going to be produced. But broadly speaking, on energy and water utilization and optimization, there are so many things that we have been able to do. I don't know whether we call them innovation, but at least there are things that are very simple that have been implemented here. And now with what is happening on oil prices, the economics are changing also. And I mean, it makes a huge difference when we talk about such basic things like energy, water. And then looking at other practices involving the community, sustaining the environment, promoting conservation programs, engaging into education, like having coral gardens and adding that to the guest experience, engaging into local community development by engaging with the schools there, creating like reef conservation has been doing with hotels, e-schools, eco guides, etc. As I said, examples are numerous, and the day last Tuesday there was, for example, a study done by University of Mauritius and University of Kassel, and unsurprisingly, we saw that hotels, for example, recycle or upcycle 30% of their solid waste produced, whereas other components of our tourism offering, like public beaches, the port or the airport, are just about 5%. So this is major. And we know that, we in the industry, we know that because of the exigencies of the trade, because we are still in a predominant B2B model where we have to comply with standards in order to be able to be enlisted as approved accommodation here in Mauritius, we always had an edge, because if we wanted to survive, we had to comply with those standards. And those standards coming from the Western world were often precursors in their way with regards to sustainable practices, whether it's health and safety, whether it's the way we deal with the environment, protection, etc., or even the guest interaction. I mean, a guest should be able to report practices, whether good or bad, to a third party. This is a basic principle of how we are supposed to engage into sustainability. No need to mention that hotels also pay the environment protection fee. There's a big debate on that because we don't think it's fair. We are for a green tax, but we are for a more equally spread tax on all economic operators or households that are having an impact on our natural endowment. So hotels have an edge for the moment, and I mean, they are doing lots of things. And at times, I look at Lux or Beachcomber or Sun or even Marriott, just to give you an example for you to understand how complex it can be when you're on your own with initiative and with a desire. In the early days, we talked about reducing food waste. Then we started like using the excess food to feed local communities. And then we got into the logistics of getting these food in safe conditions with these responsibility discharges, etc., to get those food to the local communities. And then at some point, the program is successful, and then the hotel realized that they have too much food waste. So what do we do now? Because you put expectations there. So now you're engaging into little things like managing your buffet experience, using smaller plates, getting the kitchen guys to work with more scales and measurements in order to reduce the impact of food waste. And then you end up with consumers asking for you guys to display a pledge on food waste reduction. And then you go, you're like 180, then 180 again, where now you're in really things like you're engaging into a food waste reduction program. You use technology to do the way you cut a chicken or a piece of when you get the bones and the skins, or you get the fruit peelings away, etc. All these are measured, and it's not that easy. And I always say, and I don't defend the hotels because all of them are, of course, of various levels of quality and standards. But I think hospitality industry as a whole has got an edge, and it's the rest of the destination that bothers me. The rest of the destination bothers me. And here again, we as locals, when we see what is happening around us, we're trying to push the sustainability mandate. But if any visitor lambda landing here sees that the locals are less prepared, less aware of the less green, let's put it like that, and then you realize that you're being involved in a storytelling trip, you know, which doesn't make sense. So this is the challenge for us. I want to keep it simple. We're talking about tourism, aller à la rencontre de l'autre. We're talking about community involvement, but then the host communities in Mauritius here are not empowered. As long as they are not empowered, so we need to forget about, you know, that form of tourism which is going to percolate to the last guy there in order for him or her to see the benefits of tourism. So my plea to the authorities right now is to enable this empowerment thing, enable each village to be motivated enough to attract more visitors than the neighbor there. Want to see emulation, and this is not innovation broadly speaking, but it can be innovation here on our shores. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Now, obviously, there's one thing that's evident from your response is that innovation involves all stakeholders, including local communities, the big hotels. But obviously, there's the problem of innovation funds or innovation skills and knowledge. They are more available to large organizations. So Philip, probably I'll throw the question to you. I mean, how do small organizations compared to large organizations survive by innovating, okay, in the face of lack of funding or probably also human resources? Philip? Hello.
I think the debate we're trying to have today needs to be, in my view, brought down to a more realistic, pragmatic point of view. Sorry. Okay, sorry. One of the fundamental issues, Robin, but I keep hearing all the time is Jocelyn was just referring to the big threes, the big fours, the big fives in society. This is fine. You know, you were asking me the questions about short-term and long-term investments and the availability of capital, the availability of human resources, and we know the problems. We know the problems. We keep talking about it. The bottom line that concerns me most at the moment in 2022 is that we don't work with clear objectives. We don't measure what we do. And secondly, we seem to often forget that in our society, the majority of operators employing Mauritians are SMEs, small operators. And these operators, these SMEs, are in a far more desperate situation than most. Now, I believe that we should try and focus in a very pragmatic way in finding solutions that pivot around innovation. Innovation is about change management. Let's just try and focus on 2 or 3 projects that will actually enable small operators, SMEs in our industry, the small hotel operators, independent operators, to actually come out with very clear objectives. A simple objective would be, how do I cut my operational cost by 25% in the next 12 months? How do I increase my room rates by 15% in Eurobase? How do I increase my occupancy rates by 5%? Can I do that alone? I don't think anyone can survive alone. In today's environment, I don't think Mauritius, working in silos as we all do, will come out of it. That's my view. If we don't pull together and work together jointly, government and private sector, with very serious objectives, clear strategies, but are measured every single day with accountable projects managed by individuals, not organizations, individuals, we will not make it. And I'm speaking on behalf of the small players. I'm pledging to our society to bear in mind that we always are represented by the larger players that you mentioned, but I often talk to the smaller players and I can see how desperate they are. They are desperate in so many different ways. You know, forget about having a deficit bank account. They don't have staff. They don't have equipment that works. They don't have clients. They don't have, they've got permanent quality control issues. They've got hotels that need to be renovated, equipment that needs to be changed, and alone, they can't do it. Now, talking about innovation, yeah, I mean, coming back to the theme of this conference today, innovation can help, I'm quite sure, but let's try and change the fundamentals of what we're trying to do here. You know, innovation will help change the way you do things, but it's all down to culture. It's all down to people. It's all down to wanting to do it. And not just wanting to do it, but someone has to do it and not talk about it. I probably deviated from your question, but I mean, I'm listening to everyone talk, and you know, I think we should seriously sit down and set ourselves clear targets. You know, a few weeks ago, I heard our minister, our DPM, announcing 1 million tourists by the end of the year. Fantastic. But how do we get there? Because between the 1st of May and the end of December, we will need an average of 140,000 tourists per month to achieve that. How do we do this? Does anyone have a strategy? Does anyone have ideas? Do you think people are just going to come to Mauritius? Throwing numbers can frustrate people. You know, let's be objective about it. I'm not criticizing anyone here, but I'm just saying we need to get down to back to earth, and we need to be objective. What can we do and how do we do it? In a very, very pragmatic way. Enough theory, enough studying about how we're going to do things. Let's just get on with it. Let's appoint a few people to just get on with it. And let's just benchmark. I mean, we've all been talking about it. I mean, Sydney's been talking about it. Let's go for best practices. I mean, there are certain destinations out there succeeding. Why are they succeeding? Let's just try and find out. So I think we should seriously have an observatoire to start off with, to see what the Seychelles and the Maldives are doing, because they are succeeding. And what are they doing? We need granulated information about what they are doing. I'm not going to say any more than that. Sorry.
Thanks, Philip. Obviously, well, I don't have the answer about how to reach that target number. Probably Robin from MTPA will have. But obviously, Robin, Philip has raised a very important point in terms of, okay, how do we reach that number? Which obviously I'm not asking you to give me the answer. But what I'm asking rather is, when you talk about innovation, it has lots of implication. Technology has lots of implication for innovation. I'm basically referring to the impact digital innovation or digitalization have had on the travel decision-making processes, which obviously have direct consequences for the way we market our product. So how have the MTPA, which is the marketing arm of the government of Mauritius, responded to those digital innovations, social media, online reviews in terms of the marketing strategy?
Thank you, Robin. Let me tell you a bit, let me revert back to a little to 2019 to speak about the global tourism sector and obviously the role of technology, social media, etc. in this stratosphere. And I talk about some huge figures. In 2019, there was 1.4 billion tourists traveling globally, right? Approx. About of this 1.4 billion tourists, 30%, as per the reports, were traveling long haul, 4 and 6, 7 hours of flight, right? So it amounts to 420 million tourists that were traveling long haul in 2019, right? Let's say we'll reach the same status by 2025 or 26. So which means that the figure of 400 million tourists would be traveling long haul by 2024, 2025. Out of this long haul travel, what do we get? Okay, as a region first and then as a country. Maldives got about 1.8 million. Seychelles got about 300,000 tourists, and Mauritius got 1.4 million tourists. So if you add all in simplistic manner, 4 million tourists out of 420 million tourists came to the region. Okay, so we come straightforward to the conclusion that the supply is huge. Okay, because I'm only focusing on long haul travel. So what's the point? Is bringing them to Mauritius or to the region. So prior to putting a lot of emphasis on how we market, first we should ensure that we can bring them here, knowing that everybody is 99% of all the tourists travels back at the first point. Now, the advent of technology, the emerging technology, the social media, everything what is the challenge in between all these? Is the speed of reaction. The technology exists, the facilities are there, the hotels are well equipped, we are well equipped. So everybody has, the digital manager has everything is well structured. In the speed in reacting to all what's happening around all the markets. Okay, so at the level of the MTPA, if you want to be precise, we've been increasingly committing our budget towards online marketing, social media, influencer campaigns, and all this. And I believe it could have been working much better, but it's working enough, okay, to get the right results. And that's the point to my answer. First, we should understand where the focus should be. And after, obviously, we have to do the marketing, we have to push, we have to develop content, we have to update content, we have to upload content, and most importantly, we have to ensure that those people receiving the content in a very crowded marketplace are digesting the content and are reacting and engaging up to the point of calling to action. So thank you.
Thank you, Roman. Now, obviously, your answer shed some light on how digitalization or social media have influenced travel. And obviously, the question probably you are asking, and there's no straight answer to that, is whether Mauritius can attract more travelers or can actually compete with all the other markets, right?
We can attract more travelers, provided we have a way, provided we have the way to bring them here. Okay, and that's very important. When we all talk about the success of the Maldives, they inject 3.6 million seats, at about 4 million seats per year. We are talking about 2.2 million seats in Mauritius. And 2.2 million seats in 2019, we attracted 1.4 million. So there is the fundamental of all the debate. I'm clear it's about bringing them here. Of course, marketing is fundamental, is vital, and we need to live in at the edge of the marketing technology in matters of speed, okay, to attract engagement and to motivate them to convert to what technically is called bookings.
Thank you. Now, obviously, we've talked a lot about innovation, but I think I would like to spend some time in terms of like starting that innovation. Sydney, probably I'll put the question to you. So, what are some of the challenges, probably the impediment one would face when starting out an innovation strategy in any organization?
I mean, thank you, Robin. I think we've been hearing it a little bit, and sometimes those reasons are not really real reasons, and it's like illusion. We face like a barriers that most of the time does not really exist, because we tend to complicate too much what we need. And I mean, I like every time to try to make complicated things easy. This industry is very easy. Marketing is very easy. We're talking about people. We're talking about customer. We're talking about, at the end of the day, what we want. We want a customer in this hotel. And Renaud, thanks, because Renaud and Sam been providing me. You're talking about human resource. I don't even have any problem with that. I just knock at Renaud's door, Sam doors, and all your end of your students come to me. They have a job, and I think if we can replicate that for other hotel schools as well, for our jobs, I think we will immediately sort out the human resource problem. So talking about the customer journey, where does it start? We always hear it starts, it's a dream, because as a human being, we all need to move and go. And I'm also reading some questions here about virtual tours. We need to go and meet, discover new lands and new people. And when we talk about Mauritius as a destination, it's not a cheap destination, and we don't want it to be cheap. We're talking of 11,000 kilometers of travel, 11 hours of travel. Airfares, prices of hotels. Philip thinks that the hotels are not expensive enough. I fully agree with him. And so we're talking of a luxury product. So the customer journey starts with a story. So talking about innovation, and I'm really grateful to you, Robin, with this definition. What's new? We need to have a new story first. This is where the customer journey starts. So we need to have a new story. This is marketing, because people doesn't buy rational. It's emotions. Any luxury product, we buy its emotion. So to start that customer journey, we need to get that story right and telling a new story. I think I heard some of your speakers, or even you, talking about the 3S, Sun, Sea, and Sen. So we need a new story. We need a new offering. What next? That story needs to be converted. And also helping you the conclusion of that forum. Let's have a matrix. Let's have a grid defining that customer journey. Every step. We can talk about the airlines. We can talk about the hotel offering. We can talk about the marketing. Let's list them down. And I'm sure we have enough people to define that matrix, which is a blueprint for that industry. What will make that customer, moving him from where he is to come and stay with us? Defining that customer journey. Then we identify the gap. What are the gaps? And starting with the best practice, looking at what's happening in the world. We were talking, Philip, with, I think Arvin or Nilan was still there, about website. Because, I mean, the business need websites today. If you don't have a website, I think you need to start thinking about that. So sometimes Philip just said, okay, let's copy New Zealand, for instance, have the best website. Sometimes it's that easy. I think the problem is that we complicate things. And at school as well, you know, I told you I was not a great student. I don't have a great education background, because sometimes things too complicated. I like simple things. So when we make things complicated, you know, I wanted to do an LLB. I look at the syllabus. I said, no, not for me, because I was lazy. So let's bring things back to basic, easy. This job is not difficult. Talking about responding to your previous question, Mauritius has a great opportunity. And I always said that years back, look at all these, I won't mention them, I'll mention the one I represent, Marriott International, looking at all those international brands. They are, most of them, if not all, in Mauritius. Why they're in Mauritius? Because there's a good reason. Mauritius attract those brands. They would not be here if Mauritius did not attract them. Let's also look at the positive things. That's positive. So how do I market my hotel? It's so easy. We are the largest hotel brand in the world. You just look at Formula One if you like. I prefer looking Manchester, even if you're not great at the moment. But you see Marriott Bonvoy here. I mean, Lewis Hamilton is driving his car. Marriott is here. The marketing is done already by those international chains, not only us, but all the other brands that you know. All of them are here. Great brands. They are everywhere on the planet. They attract every customer segment, every personas. We just need, through those channels, and this is what I do, Robin, to attract those customers, I just sell not even my hotel. If through the world of Marriott, I just sell Mauritius, the beauty of Mauritius, where they come. When the client going on Marriott channels, they see Mauritius, of course they'll come and knock at my doors. The job is done. So sometimes taking those complicated things, let's make it easy. Sometimes we complicate our life. If we have one Excel, you see how we increase our rates, Philip, we just put it on Excel. And it is done. Just put that grid, that basics, the customer journey. Start with the story, the dream, how we make them dream, the story, the hotel, the airline, etc. Of course, if there's no seats, we won't have them. So there should be also a sync between the amount of airline seats with our ambitions. So, and then I think if we really want to make it happen, if we really want, sometimes, Renaud, you mentioned something, because this is what I'm good at, listening to other people and just repeat it. You talk about one thing you probably didn't mention, I'm sure you had it as well. You said skills and knowledge, but the desire. If we have a desire and we want to innovate, get things changed, making something new, I think the first innovation is taking recommendation from tomorrow's workshop and implement it. If we only implement half of it, we would have had a great innovation week.
Thank you. Thank you, Sydney. Now, obviously, we'll probably move to the next phase of the debate. When we talk about innovation in its implication for human resources, the implementation of innovation, it requires a proper regulatory framework. It requires institutional support, or what you call political support. Now, obviously, when you talk about new innovation in our regulation like GDPR, Philip, okay, they have surely impacted innovation or positively or probably created an implicit barrier, okay, to innovation strategies implemented by organizations. So what's your take on the influence of GDPR and the so likes on innovation strategies, Philip?
I think compliance and GDPR is part of our compliance mapping globally. It does have an impact. I mean, it does have an impact on what you can do, what you can't do. But I do think that, you know, like everything else in life, we can't be carried away with excessive compliance and policies. You know, we are already navigating in a highly disturbed global environment, business environment. And I do think that compliance, and besides GDPR, compliance can be an additional barrier to survival and growth. And unfortunately, a lot of the policy makers are often, and too often, should I say, and too distant from the reality of a market. You know, they don't really understand what the operators are facing. It's all headwinds. You know, after COVID and now with the Russia-Ukraine crisis, we are facing very, very, very stiff challenges. And and our competitors have really, really improved so much. But we should be, and we should be paying a lot of attention of what's going on at market level. And we've got to know where the markets are moving to. And we have ways and means of doing that, you know, on a daily basis, live 27/4. We know the market movements. We know where people are booking globally. And we've got to pay our attention on that. I mean, we've talked about it already, but yeah, I do think that an excessive amount of compliance can be a serious barrier to growth.
Since we're on the subject of regulatory structure and compliance, just like obviously advancing the sustainable development agenda also requires our regulatory framework. And you've mentioned earlier on about the environmental tax. So what changes you would like to see in our innovation in regulation, because that's also part of innovation in regulatory framework. What changes you would like to see, okay, to advance the sustainability agenda when it comes to innovation in our legal framework, regulatory framework?
I think it's a difficult one because the regulator that we have in the ministry supporting them, they know about industry practices, they know about behaviors, and they have the upper hand on licensing, etc. That's the traditional model. And it works in some areas, it works less in some others. If we're talking about how the framework can gear itself towards how market is responding to demand and how the industry is innovating, creating new projects or creating other aspects that are going to meet the new guest experience expectations. At times, the regulator is not aware enough, hasn't got the knowledge or the experience, and it's a tall order for them. I think there have been a number of proposals to improve that ecosystem with, you know, reducing licensing requirements, getting technology into the monitoring and, you know, safeguarding the Mauritius host label or reputation. And as those activities grow and the operators who are economic operators looking for profit have ideas and, you know, are creative and build up product offerings for storytelling that makes sense, at times the regulator just can't keep pace with what is happening. So I think it's a difficult one because we can't just put a general blanket on the issues that industry is faced with, because there are so many things happening. It's a bit like there are new types of cars and then they get in Mauritius and you don't have an HS code for that. The same thing applies for the industry. Some guys are, you know, creative and they come up with guest experience offerings that can't meet the licensing licensing nomenclature of the tourism authority, for example. So I would broadly say that market dynamics are what they are, and the regulator needs to maintain its primary role of safeguarding the destination's reputation and goodwill, and then trust to third independent parties some specialized functions if ever they want to. And one extreme, of course, is to be like Hong Kong and like what the recent consultants mentioned, no need of licensing, but you enforce malpractices, you name and shame, or you remove from the business licenses those who've been putting the destination at risk or whatever. You did differently, but we are very far from there. We're very far from there because it's a bit like Airbnb. It has been mentioned earlier today, when at some point we realized the scope of Airbnb activity here. It's not Airbnb to which we want to point fingers. It's about informal residency in Mauritius that is not going to the licensed. And license is not only hotels, but it's about those 800, I think, non-hotel accommodations who pay license duly and who are being controlled by tourism authority. So earlier we had that discussion on Airbnb. So the reaction was, let's talk to them. But you can't talk to them. They're just a website, an email address. You don't really talk to them. And if you're telling them that Mauritius tourist accommodation is regulated by us and have to comply to us, they don't give a damn. They don't care about that. So you do what you want, but the demand is there, not only Airbnb, but others, self-couching, etc. So I think there's no quick and fast and direct answer to what you're saying. The only thing is the authorities and the regulatory framework needs to keep pace with market dynamics. And to do so, the regulator probably needs to get engaged into more, get a better grasp of how market dynamics are operating. And you know, one example that was again mentioned earlier today, I think we were mentioning Mauritius tourism having a much broader offering than just its nice hotels and nice other things. We don't have a count of how good or how our nature parks or mountains are faring, but still we have a local who gets lost in our parks and mountains every week. Are we going to just keep watching? Some of our free recreational areas are still free, so they don't have a budget to maintain that. But this offering appears on, you know, market operators such as Viatos or even the locals at, you know, $45, $55 a visit. So are we going to just keep watching, or are we going to get involved into that? So I don't know whether this helps, but I think we definitely need to put our brains together and see how we can change these things slightly and get the regulator to be better equipped for this, and maybe, as I said, maybe reduce the initiative that they have on license and rather go and look for the unlicensed and help them to get not licensed, but at least doing the business correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Yeah, of course.
May I intervene just 1 minute on that? What I think, Jocelyn, I just would like to react on one thing, which is common knowledge to all of us, and it's been a major problem. Mauritius, Dana mentioned it as well during a speech, is the country is dirty as basic. Let's call it in very simple words. We all know. No, it's not Jocelyn. Jocelyn doesn't agree. Now, that's the first thing. Second thing, this is a major challenge. We're talking of sustainability. This is a major challenge for the industry. Third thing, we have police of environment. We need to reactivate if it's dormant or whatever it's happening. Fourth, I think all of us, starting with us authorities, starting with you, MTPA, all of us hotels, through LARIM over bodies, we need to keep on repeating, mentioning it on social media everywhere, but it is a threat, a major challenge. So we should stop looking at our destination doing well, but we just need to adopt what they're doing. Yes, if we need to enforce, we need to enforce. That's the basic. And we get it done. Because yes, if we need to send people to jail because of throwing kind of beers while driving, let's do it. I'm not, if we're saying it's a challenge to the economy, if we're saying it's a major problem, let's deal with the problem. Let's not stop doing conferences and all these things while we can't even clean the country. That's what you were trying to say about sustainability. I don't have education to look at those big sustainability and all what SDG says, etc. But I know that if a tourist doesn't come saying Mauritius is dirty, okay, let's clean it. But not only clean it. I am also part of an association. 1 year, we went to Mountain Le Monde, and we got 10 lorries of garbage during the clean. Yeah. But next year, we went again to the same place. We got 15. 15, in the same place, same area. So where's the police? Where are the authorities? What are the rules? I'm sure there's laws, but do we enforce it? So again, basics. When we talk about sustainability, basics. When we talk about development, innovation, basic. If we get them next year, we can come over and then we push it to the next level and we move on. So we have a serious problem, and this is definitely a challenge. We talk about sustainability, wastewater, water renewal, etc. but those basics immediately, urgently need to be addressed. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Sin. I think I totally take your point. And my take on this is, irrespective of how strong our regulatory framework is, we need what we call attitudinal and behavioral changes. Irrespective of the fines, the institution that monitor, okay, the environment and our resources, people's behavior have to change. We need to own the problem, okay, which I think is very fundamental. Now, obviously, we've touched a little bit on sustainability, marketing, the innovation culture, but there's one thing that's very clear. Innovation comes at a cost, which raises the question about finance, Philip. So how do we finance innovation? And obviously, finance is a major barrier to implementing that innovation or even starting that innovation. How do we finance and how do we overcome the challenges posed by financial resources, Philip? Thank you.
Good question. I don't have the answer. You know, one thing that I can observe across the world is budgets, planning. Most companies, most governments have annual budgets. And what they do is they have a standard Excel sheet with standard expenses, with target income. These targets and these items haven't changed for the last 50 years, 60 years. And the item R&D doesn't exist. I'm not just talking about R&D, I'm just talking about innovation. It just doesn't exist. You know, when you talk about investing in innovation, most CEOs and most shareholders will think about a laptop or a phone. That's their budget. That's their concept of a budget. It's a mindset. You know, you've got to change the way you think, the way you spend your money. Your priorities change over time. I'd just like to share a story with you because it's a real story. About 37 years ago, I was invited in Helsinki. No, 27 years ago, sorry. I was invited in Helsinki, Finland, and I spent some time with Nokia. In those days, Nokia sold 7 phones out of 10. They had 70% market share in the phone industry. And their success blinded them completely. Their research and development was so focused on what they did and what they believed. When Apple came out, I mean, I lived it several times. I was invited in Finland every year. In those days, I had to go to Finland every year. And I went to see them every year. I'm actually the consul of Finland, so I had to go there every year. And they were so successful, they felt they could dictate to the world what would happen to mobile communication. They were completely blinded. The notion of having data on the phone was totally against their vision. They said to me several times, Apple will fail because no one will ever read an email. No one will use their phone to play. A phone is meant to talk. And they stuck to it. And they were so focused, they impressed everyone. Okay? BlackBerry came out, they were laughing at BlackBerry. BlackBerry went bankrupt. And they thought that Apple would go exactly the same way. A few years later, I went back there. Nokia was bust. But before going bust, they had the vision of changing their business model. They're not quite dead yet. And they were partially bought out by Microsoft in any case. But what I'm saying to you here is that sometimes success can blind you. And I'm to some extent worried about what's happening to Mauritius now, because in the early 1990s, everyone in the world in leisure, resort destinations, were trying to copy what Mauritius was doing. In fact, they were copying and improving. But Maldives didn't exist. The Seychelles did not exist. We were just the leaders. What we did was right. There was no question about it. Our leaders spoke, everyone listened to them. In fact, they often talk to themselves. Okay? What happened? We ended up listening to ourselves and we stopped listening to others. And that is the greatest danger of any successful organization or destination. We were perhaps too successful in our markets at some point in time, and we stopped monitoring what was going on around us. Now, is it too late? I don't think it's too late. But we have certainly been overtaken in terms of product by a lot of destinations. And today, in terms of value for money, we are at a risk of running into headwinds. Now, how do we go about repairing this? I have no idea. Can innovation help us? Yes, it can. It can. Just some food for thought. You know, I was talking to you about Nokia being a major success story because Mauritius was a major, major success story. Okay. When I see the results in 2022 of our biggest competitors, yes, I am a bit concerned. I am a bit concerned. But I don't have the reply. Alone, I don't have the solution.
Thank you, Philip. Now, obviously, from the different topics we've touched upon, there's obviously lots of knowledge gap. There's obviously lots of learning for us. Okay, so obviously MRIC is here to facilitate that innovation. So if I ask my final question before we can open the floor for questions, where are the knowledge gaps? So if MRIC say, okay, we've got some funding, where would you like this to be invested in terms of research project? What would you like to see going forward? What are the knowledge gaps when it comes to training and development in terms of understanding innovation, implementing innovations, the sustainability aspect of innovation? So that's the closing question I would like to put forward to you. Probably Renaud, I'll start with you.
De mon point de vue, tout ce qui a été dit jusqu'à maintenant a un fondement, et je vais essayer, pour que Sidney comprenne, d'être aussi simple que possible. Le fondement de cette industrie et le fondement de son développement, de sa pérennité, c'est la main-d'œuvre. Les ressources humaines aujourd'hui doivent être prises en compte, et je pense que MRIC devrait s'investir dans la recherche sur ce qu'il faut faire pour résoudre un des grands challenges en termes de ressources humaines de ce pays, pas simplement d'ailleurs dans le tourisme, mais dans d'autres secteurs aussi, qui est l'inadéquation entre les formations et le marché de l'emploi. Ça, c'est la première chose. Inadéquation, ça veut dire quoi? Ça veut dire qu'on met en place des programmes qui n'ont pas de résonance dès qu'on les confronte aux réalités professionnelles. Il manque de compétences aux gens qui arrivent sur le marché du travail, que ce soit dans le tourisme, que ce soit dans l'hôtellerie, que ce soit dans la santé, que ce soit dans le well-being. Aujourd'hui, les gens qui arrivent à quelque niveau que ce soit, pas simplement au niveau des cols blancs, mais au niveau des cols bleus aussi. Quand on voit l'incapacité de nos et ce n'est pas la faute des jeunes, je pense que c'est la faute des institutions de formation en partie, et c'est la faute des politiques, je ne parle pas des personnes, mais des policies qui sont mises en place au niveau de l'éducation. Aujourd'hui, recruter quelqu'un dans l'hôtellerie est un vrai challenge. Il y a un désamour clair vis-à-vis du tourisme. Il y a un rejet du mode de vie promis par l'entrée dans ce secteur d'activité. Parce que ce que l'on a dit et que l'on a trop dit, à mon avis, et je pense que nous sommes nombreux à apporter la preuve du contraire, on peut vivre très bien, très heureux et sûrement très longtemps en travaillant dans le tourisme et en ayant une famille. L'important aujourd'hui, et ça c'est le premier challenge, comment les hôtels doivent-ils recruter ou peuvent-ils recruter pour atteindre des objectifs qui sont définis par des stratégies, 1 million de touristes, s'il n'y a pas de personnel pour travailler dans les hôtels. Aujourd'hui, Sydney, tu me corrigeras, et les hôteliers qui sont ici confirmeront, sous l'autorité qui chapeaute le tout, l'ARIM, il manque combien de travailleurs dans l'hôtellerie? Quelques milliers. OK, 4 à 5 000 personnes aujourd'hui qui manquent pour satisfaire une demande actuelle. Qu'est-ce qu'on va faire à la fin de l'année si on est à 100% de taux d'occupation? C'est une catastrophe qui s'annonce parce que la qualité de prestation que l'on va proposer ne sera pas à la hauteur de l'attente de ces touristes qui vont vouloir venir à Maurice, et ce sera au détriment de la destination et au profit des destinations concurrentes que l'on a évoquées plus tôt et qui peut-être sont mieux préparées et qui ont une approche des ressources humaines qui sont un petit peu différentes. Donc moi, ce que je suggère en matière d'innovation, c'est qu'au niveau des ressources humaines, il y ait non pas un changement, non pas qu'on mette des sparadraps sur des jambes de bois, mais qu'il y ait un vrai changement de paradigme, en anglais on dit un paradigm shift, au niveau de la gestion des ressources humaines depuis le début jusqu'à la fin. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut proposer? Bien déjà que l'éducation touristique soit incluse dans les syllabus dès la première, dès les débuts au primaire. Il faut que les jeunes Mauriciens se rendent compte que le tourisme est une activité qui est noble, qui est respectueuse. Il y a 20 ans, je dirigeais l'école hôtelière de Maurice. On avait 2000 applications pour 200 places. Nos cibles aujourd'hui, il a 20 applications pour 60 places. C'est quand même un gros problème. Alors, c'est vrai que d'autres activités ont émergé, d'autres secteurs sont attractifs pour de multiples raisons, mais l'hôtellerie, le tourisme recèlent encore de nombreuses possibilités d'épanouissement pour les jeunes. Alors, le premier challenge, c'est les recruter. Le deuxième challenge, c'est les retenir. Et pour les retenir, il faut avoir, là encore, une approche très différente de celle qu'on a eue jusqu'à maintenant et cesser de décourager ceux qui rentrent sur le marché par des pratiques d'un autre temps. Et il faut que les jeunes soient respectés dans leur choix, soient accompagnés et soient motivés dans leur développement, ce qui n'est pas toujours le cas. Alors, c'est le cas au niveau de la direction des hôtels, et nous, on a la chance de travailler à peu près avec l'industrie dans son ensemble sur le territoire mauricien et bien au-delà, à la tête des établissements, dans les départements des ressources humaines, du développement des talents, de l'acquisition and culture. Enfin, tous les noms aujourd'hui sont importants pour définir les départements des ressources humaines. À ce niveau-là, on a conscience. C'est en dessous que les gens qui travaillent depuis 10, 20, 30 ans n'ont pas conscience de l'importance de l'accompagnement de ces jeunes qu'ils découragent parfois, sciemment ou inconsciemment, et qui fait qu'on n'a pas aujourd'hui suffisamment de jeunes qui s'embarquent dans ce métier-là. Donc moi, et par rapport à ce secteur que j'occupe, je suggère qu'il y ait un vrai travail d'identification des besoins, vous l'avez évoqué dans votre rapport, identification des besoins pour le court terme et le moyen terme. Laissons le long terme pour le moment, parce que Covid nous a montré qu'on était souvent dans le très très court terme. Donc, pour le court terme et le moyen terme, à l'horizon de 3 ans, combien de main-d'œuvre avons-nous besoin? Comment devons-nous les former? Qui doit les former? Et répartir le travail entre les institutions qui existent et non pas mettre des institutions en compétition sur des mêmes marchés. Et ça aussi, c'est quelque chose d'important. On ne peut pas faire venir des universités extérieures alors qu'aujourd'hui, celles qui sont présentes n'arrivent pas à avoir le nombre suffisant par rapport aux Mauriciens. Solution, faire venir des étudiants étrangers. C'est une solution. Faire venir des employés étrangers est une solution aujourd'hui très sérieusement envisagée et peut-être nécessaire pour Maurice. C'est ce que personne ne veut, évidemment, mais c'est ce que tout le monde fait. On parle du service mauricien, du sourire qui a fait de la notoriété de la destination, et on se dit, ça, on doit protéger. Mais personne n'est en mesure de protéger ça si on veut maintenir une qualité de service. Il va falloir faire venir des gens pour travailler. Autrement, encore une fois, on va à la catastrophe. Donc moi, je pense que le problème des ressources humaines est à la base de tout le reste. L'éducation, pas simplement l'éducation tertiaire, l'éducation de la population. Il faut réintroduire ou introduire, je ne sais pas si ça a déjà existé, de l'éducation civique à l'école. Il faut que les jeunes Mauriciens se comportent les uns vis-à-vis des autres et comprennent quelles sont les possibilités que leur offre leur pays. Il faut arrêter cette fuite des Mauriciens à l'extérieur, et pas que la fuite des cerveaux, la fuite des mains aussi. Les Mauriciens vont travailler ailleurs parce que juste on a un meilleur salaire et que on peut éventuellement envoyer un petit peu à la famille, ça sera toujours plus que les salaires parfois très faibles. Et ce n'est pas un jugement, c'est un constat, hein, qui sont offerts localement. Donc il faut garder les Mauriciens ici, il faut faire venir des étrangers sans honte. Dubaï est une comparaison, mais il y en a d'autres aux Seychelles. Qu'est-ce qui a fait la destination Seychelles sur le plan touristique? Les Mauriciens qui sont partis travailler là-bas. Oui ou non? Donc il faut avoir aussi cette humilité de dire, OK, allons prendre ce qui existe de bien à l'extérieur, allons faire venir des jeunes qui vont pouvoir, ou des moins jeunes, qui ont des compétences, immigration choisie, qui vont venir à Maurice apporter, et permettons à tous ces gens de travailler au profit de l'expansion d'une industrie qui, elle, va payer des impôts, qui remplira les caisses de l'État. Et donc, on est dans un cercle vertueux. Voilà. Je pourrais en dire beaucoup plus, mais vous avez compris le fondement de ma réflexion.
Anyone else would like to add? Justin?
If I may, Robin, I think just to add on what Bruno is saying, the greatest danger that we are faced with is the loss of manpower within the industry. We know it's about 4,000 or 5,000 right now. And the fact that some people might be tempted to say that foreign labor is the solution, and then we get into a national debate that has no beginning or no end. What I've been saying to the authorities is that, let's face it, it's not only about hospitality and tourism, but all the sectors are suffering from a lack of manpower. Even if today our BPO sector is very successful, let it be known, and let me remind you that we should have been much bigger in terms of BPO because we have been constrained by lack of manpower over the years. Now, today, the situation is as follows. Enrollment rates are getting down. The proportion of people leaving the educational system earlier is going higher. The proportion of people getting into the vocational fees is getting smaller, and the competition from BPO and other sectors is growing. Against these, the industry has got its own features, I would say. Yeah, salaries are probably not as attractive as in the financial sector or banking sector. They are just at the national average. C'est pas un péché. And next to these, government and the authorities looking at labor, they can't blind themselves about the natural situation that we're faced with. There are less inputs on the labor market, there are more demand, and we as a country were encouraging migration elsewhere. We signed circular migration agreements, we advertise, we used to advertise jobs at international organizations such as SADC or COMESA, now we advertise for private agents. You just tune on your television for NBC, and you will see that Ministry of Employment is encouraging people to contact agent X or Y to go and work in the Middle East or to go and work as a butcher in Canada or in Saskatchewan. So I think this is funny, no longer funny, because I have invited them to put the same effort or half of it into handling our issues. Foreign labor as a temporary solution or maybe a more durable solution, looking at how we as, we like to jump forward. So let's jump forward on education, and let's jump forward on attracting more foreign students here. But in order to do so, I mean, all the bits of the puzzle need to be aligned. You just can't say, foreign labor, and then you have the protest from the trade unionists, and you have the list of unemployed at the Ministry of Labor, which is unchanged with its 45,000 people looking for employment, which is not in the database anyway. So just as a word of conclusion, yesterday at the opening ceremony, each of the speakers quoted a very eminent personality. I will quote myself, a much less eminent one, simple one. Ne passons pas à côté des choses simples. There are so many things that are simple, and we're just like, mental gratification. Some other rude people can use other words for that, but I think let's stop running away. Fuir en avant. Let's stop running away from the issues. We need to get these done. And if some of you are interested, like food for thought, there are things that can't be analyzed, studied, or questioned in isolation. You have to look at it at the broader picture. You can't just put things next to each other and try to figure out how you're going to make things happen. You mentioned the MRIC's mandate. During this week, I've been in interaction with the Ministry, of course, Tourism Authority, MTPA, NPCC, HRDC, UOM, plus you guys, MRIC. Man, you guys, you need to talk to each other. I'm going to talk to each of you guys, but at some point, I'm getting older, and it's not going to be easy. So these are things that we need to grasp and get it done. Maybe the younger generation has a lot of work to do there. Two examples before I close. Jardin Pamplemousse is one of the most visited sites in Mauritius. And to my knowledge, this is the only public infrastructure that has a paid entry system. While Pamplemousse has increased its rate for very good reasons, the others are still thinking whether they're going to charge a fee. So 15 or 20 years have elapsed, they're still thinking whether they're going to charge a fee, when it is well known that these things are being charged by private operators. I mean, all the credit goes to them, but then if the private operator think that they can get a living out of this when the infrastructure is getting down, so there's no point in putting more effort into that. Second, just an example for you, you know that some people who get interested into local community development, we know that Mauritius is divided into 145 municipal and village council areas. And out of those 145, Le Morne is 145th out of this list of 145, and this has been going on for so many years. And Le Morne hosts some of the finest properties in this country. So are we going to keep watching, or can we do a few things to change that? Same goes for Chamarel, most visited place by tourists here, but going through the meander of Chamarel to the southern corner of the earth, whilst going there, you have those 12 to 14 table d'hôte. Ils vivotent. They're just struggling. So can we do something about it? Yes, maybe we can do something about it, but we can't do 99% of the work when we still have commissions charged by taxis to bring people there. So that's the issue. Let's face it. There are simple things we need to change. Otherwise, innovation might be a misnomer.
Good. Thank you, Justin. I'll give Philip the last words.
Just to touch up on HR, human resource, probably one of the single biggest challenges for Mauritius at the moment. Like elsewhere in the world, by the way, I mean, the hotel industry worldwide is suffering exactly the same problems. Now, how can innovation help our technology? Just to give you a few ideas of how business models have been turned upside down in certain countries, in certain companies. I'll give you two examples. Brussels, Belgique, has probably about the same number of rooms as Mauritius has. The majority of hotels in Brussels don't employ staff. They don't employ staff. It's all outsourced, BPO, to professionals, okay? And they pay per occupied room. And whilst having done that and outsourced the management of HR, they've cut their operational costs by about 20%. It was a win-win. There's nothing worse for any organization to have big teams to manage. It's a nightmare. Who wants to manage people? It's a business. It's specialized. Could we do that for Mauritius? Could this be done for Mauritius? I don't know. MSC Cruise, gradually, slowly becoming the biggest cruise line in the world. They employ on average about 50,000 people. Okay, maybe more. They started about 4 years ago. They outsource their HR, recruiting, training, positioning, rotations, and they've taken the decision that they are going to outsource this 100%. They are not going to be employing people. They don't. They do not want to employ people. It's a job to employ people. It's a full-time job. HR management is complex. It's all about productivity management. It's all about setting KPIs, which many operations in our industry don't have time to do. Why should we have a fixed number of staff when we're running a hotel at 40%? It's crazy. Madness. These are just small ideas, but again, it's all about benchmarking. It's about learning what other people are doing and how they're doing it. And by the way, the company that runs the Brussels operation is based here in Mauritius. It's one of the BPO operations there. They don't employ staff here, but they manage it from here. Okay. Now the MSC Cruise HR is also here in Mauritius.
Innovation.
They do it because technology has enabled them to do it. They talk to ships around the world from their phone. Numbers are shared spontaneously across the world. These are things that we must try and reflect on. You know, we have an HR problem. Everyone has the same problem. But if everyone has the same problem, surely there must be a common solution. Food for thought.
Thank you, everyone. I think we have a few minutes to take questions. It's past lunchtime, I know. So, question from the audience. Yeah, let's take the audience first, and then we'll go virtual.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to congratulate MRIC for this excellent initiative and also for inviting me. I'm rarely invited in such type of fora these days because I say bluntly what has to be said. Why do we innovate? I think we have to get back to the basics. This is what I hear from the panelists. Excellent presentation, all of you. I'm very impressed by the quality of your presentations, the depth of your thoughts. Why do we innovate? And which leads me to the basic question. I always call it a very stupid question on my part, but I will still put the question, why should tourists come to Mauritius? If we answer this question honestly, I think we would solve many of the problems that the industry is facing. Why should a tourist come to Mauritius when they have similar products being offered at cheaper rates maybe, a better quality maybe, but still going elsewhere? We used to be the leader in this part of the world. We are no more this leader. Not only in terms of arrivals, but more importantly in terms of foreign exchange earnings. Maldives, Seychelles, even Sri Lanka at some point in time was leading the way in terms of earnings from tourism. But yes, we have to innovate, ladies and gentlemen. We remember those, you know, every one of us, we have a smartphone, right? But as soon as a new model comes up, is introduced on the market, everybody wants to buy that new model, in spite of the smartphone being very good in itself right now. If tomorrow one comes on the market, we want to have it. And this is the trend with our youngsters also. So why do we innovate? There has been, as you know, the baby boomers at some point in time. They had their own needs. Then came the millennials. They had their own needs. And then we had the Z generation. They have their own needs as well, which is different to one another. And the next generation is already born. That's the Alpha generation. What will be their needs in about 10 years from now? We have to cater for that. That's why I believe there is need for innovation. But at the same time, there's a generational issue. Our forefathers plowed the fields, but they never wanted their children to do the same thing. We did industrial sector. Those who worked on the machines, they never wanted their children to work on the machines. Later on, tourism has come in, the services sector has come in, and everybody is in the services sector. Now that tourism has made its way, people are looking for something else. What is that something else? If there is no innovation in the sector, why are people tempted to go on cruise lines? Why are they tempted to go to Dubai, to go to Europe? Because there is innovation perhaps in those sectors as compared to what is happening here. And as we say, the success of yesterday is the best recipe for tomorrow's failure. And we have been resting on our laurels for quite some time. I fully agree with Philip. And Phillips, I must remind you that in 2004, I was part of the delegation with you to Helsinki. We went to Nokia all together, grâce à Philip. Nokia started as a Nokia shoes. That's what the lady who accompanied us told us, Philip. It was a Nokia shoes. Before that, it was toilet paper. They innovated. From Nokia shoes, they got into rubber cables. From rubber cables, they got into telephony. And hence, Nokia took birth. The Nokia that we got to know later on. That was innovation. And yes, they rested on their laurels. We were in the headquarters of Nokia. They rested thereafter on their laurels, and they've been taken over by the others, Apple, Samsung, etc. So Mauritius, let's get back to basic. This is what all the panelists are saying, bottom line. Innovation, yes, we have to innovate, but we should not lose sight of the basics. What I mean by the basics, we talked about Pamplemousses, we talked about Le Monde, very good. Let's look at Port Louis, a place where most of the tourists would come. Basic. Just imagine a tourist near the marketplace. I used to say it very often, even on radio. Just imagine a woman, an old person, near the marketplace. He or she wants to go to the toilet. Horror. Horror. We're talking of innovation. Just imagine the lady is pregnant. Just imagine it's a young lady. Where does she go? In Port Louis. And this applies to anywhere in Mauritius. Le Monde, Pamplemousses, Curpip, Cateau, just name it, any flat. And we're talking of innovation. Look at hygiene in our country. The basic things. Do you need government to go and tell people that your place of work where you sell food should be clean? You need government to come and tell you that? Now, having said this, I will conclude. I don't have a question really, but I really appreciate what all you said. Do you know that every Mauritian is involved in hospitality management? Every single Mauritian? Look at our home. It has everything that a hotel has. From the front office, to the back office, to the kitchen, to the dining room, to the bedroom. That's what a hotel has. So if we try to create that culture de l'hospitalité, culture du tourisme, you can innovate right at home through what you have, how to receive people, how to prepare your home, how to prepare your bed, how to clean your toilet. I used to tell my kids, our toilet should look better than our lounge. It reflects the character, the personality of the people there. So I think this is what is missing. There are plenty of things that I would like to share with you. We want to innovate, but at the same time, we are losing our smile. What is the USP of Mauritius? We are losing the quality of services. We are losing just everything that made us famous in those days. We don't have finance, fully agree, but we have finance to pay Liverpool 400 million rupees. Let's be clear about it. Let's be practical. These are experts, they are not political nominees. And I'm happy by the depths of their thoughts. But the decisions are taken elsewhere, beyond their capability. Who would have taken 400 million at this time to advertise on a stadium which was closed when our frontiers were closed? 400 million rupees, I would open offices everywhere in the world with that same money. I would rather stop here. Just because I have so much to share with you, so thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, San. We are limited by time. I'm really very sorry. Can I ask that you ask the question, send us an email or?
Okay, one second.
All right.
Just thanks to the panelists and thanks for being here. For me, the only things coming with innovation is education. I would just stop it here. We all have to think about it from the small kids, from the school, from the house, just highlight just now. And this education should be included in the syllabus of the student from the very beginning for this innovation to be successful in the future. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this valuable closing remark, and I'm sure MRIC has taken note of that. And obviously, project relating to training and development, which I think has been the main focus of the discussion. I'm sure there will be debate at MRIC, how do you integrate that develop it into a research and innovative project. Thank you very much, everyone. Bruno, Justin, Sydney, Robin, and Philip, thank you. On behalf of MRIC, I thank you for agreeing to be our panelists. Okay, I think the debate has been thoughtful. It has been very useful to our stakeholders. And as I mentioned, please feel free to send your comments so that we can improve on our report, improve on our recommendation to make it as realistically as possible and not only theoretical. So round of applause for our panelists, please. Thank you, everyone. Oh.
So this has been a very interesting and enriching exercise. So unfortunately, we don't have time to take more questions, but feel free to address us at MRIC, contact@mric.mu. So you can always send us an email, and we'll, with the help of the panelists and the moderator, will try to respond to all your questions. So the discussions which have been held today will truly provide the grounds for the development of a national roadmap for the sector, the tourism sector. But this will also contribute to the general objectives of les Assises for developing a national roadmap for innovation. And the salient findings of the panel discussions will be presented by the moderator tomorrow during the plenary session. And in fact, you will have the opportunity to listen to the recommendations and comments from other sectoral fora which are currently ongoing here. So the working document, which we mentioned earlier on, so that will be consolidated into a solid report, and the report will be circulated to all of you. And we will have a national consultation exercise which will be held, and maybe in 2 months' time we will also have a validation workshop. And now let me seize this opportunity to thank all the moderator and all the panel members, and also Mrs. Sibalak and Ms. Ormugam for their presentations. The working group members for the unconditional support and for participating during all the various working group sessions. All the participants for attending this workshop, either physically or virtually, and also our executive director and chairman, and last but not the least, my co-chairperson, Rubina, and my other colleagues, Sashita, Pavan, and Kashmira, just to name a few. So thank you very much. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of today's sectoral forum, and I would like to invite you all for lunch, and I hope to see you tomorrow for the plenary session. So it's scheduled at, I guess, 11:15. Yeah, thank you.